Welcome back to the Capes and Tights podcast right here at capesandtights.com. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. This episode 80, we're here to talk the unreleased 1994 The Fantastic Four movie from Constantine Films. Never released, like I said, unreleased. We were able to get a copy to watch. Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles, my LCS, and I watched this separately at our own homes, talked about it today, and talked about why they haven't made a good Fantastic Four movie since, and what about this movie and some of the history and lore behind this movie, The Fantastic Four from 1994. So check out this episode. But before you do, check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter, as well as Apple, Spotify, and all your major podcasting platforms. Please review us 5 stars. But this is episode 80 with Paul Eaton of Galactic Comics and Collectibles, discussing the 1994 unreleased The Fantastic Four movie and the Fantastic Four movies in general. Enjoy, everyone. Welcome to the land of podcasting, Paul Eaton. Mr. is sick with something every other week.
It feels like every week. Like, I could not believe to be sick again. Like, I've been sick since mid-December. This sucks.
Two things. We were cooped up for a couple of years, so I feel like that's part of it. The second thing is you do have 3 daughters.
Oh my God, yeah.
Kids have germs attached to them. I don't know if you knew this or not.
Oh, they're like little petri dishes. And there's always something weird and different. And then I got like different schools and the home daycare that my wife runs. So like I am guaranteed to get it at some point. Like whatever the hell it is, I'm gonna get it.
Yeah, just building up your immune system so you can live longer, right? Now your body's gonna be used to this. So like when you're 70 or 80 years old, you're just gonna be like, haha, colds. I got you.
You'd think by now I would have had everything there was to have. Like it wouldn't be possible to still be getting crap.
Paul has chlamydia.
Never had it, don't want it again. That's terrible.
We're here to talk. So there's 2 things. One thing I wanted to say ahead of time on this whole Fantastic Four thing is that this is likely more of a podcast about why is the Fantastic Four movies been so difficult to do well? I think that's part of the conversation I want to have, because it's kind of hard to do a review podcast on a movie that's a good majority of the listeners or viewers have not seen or don't know how to get to see. And so we'll do a little bit of mixtures of both on it, but it's one of those, it's a weird thing. It's like the Christmas, the holiday Star Wars special. Oh, by the way, Paul hates Star Wars.
Here we go again.
He doesn't actually hate Star Wars, everybody, just so you know. He just is not a massive fan like some people.
I am not as big of a Star Wars fan as it is assumed that I am because I have a comic store. Like I don't have Star Wars sheets in my bed. Sorry, folks. I don't.
Well, that's only because your wife won't let you.
No, she took the Ninja Turtle ones off.
Okay.
Said I couldn't have those.
Cool. She's like, because those only fit a twin size bed. Those are from your childhood, Paul.
I have G.I. Joe ones here.
Okay.
We use them as tablecloths.
Oh, there you go.
They're dope. I had people try to buy them. I'm like, no, those are mine. Can't have those.
But this like we did the Star Wars holiday special. It's like there is a lot of people who have seen that because it actually was released at one point.
Right.
This never actually was supposed to see the light of day. And I watched I didn't realize this until after we talked about this. I found it yesterday that there was a documentary that was filmed and aired. If you ever want to watch it, Paul, like on your free time, whatever, it's actually available on YouTube to stream, like just regular for free. It's an hour and a half long. It's called Doomed: The Untold Story of Roger Corman's The Fantastic Four. And so I did get a little
read a bunch about this after watching this.
A little bit of nuggets on why and here and all this stuff. And the theory that this actually got released to the public from a person who worked on the movie, went to get it copied for themselves.
Right.
You get a couple like he's obviously like, back at those days at 94, it's like you had to bring it to an actual place who dubbed them from one to another. And they thought that person late at night was like doing the work on it and goes, holy shit, this is the Fantastic Four movie. And then made 2 copies for the dude and 1 copy for him. And then at that point, it circulating and so on and so forth.
Right.
The theory is, Paul, that because it was unreleased and the bootleg copies and all that stuff that ended up at Comic Cons and all these different things, that there might actually be more people who have seen this film now than would have in its initial release because it was a low budget Constantine film.
I can see that. Like I started getting into all of this stuff. Like I'd never heard of Constantine film, and I watch a lot of movies. Like I'm not like I don't watch them the way you do to like go in and discuss. But I have always been a movie fan since I was like 5 years old. I saw RoboCop and I got hooked. And I don't think I've ever heard of Constantine films. I've never heard of the makeup designers. I've never heard of the special effects people. Like and looking up, they use like the least expensive crews and everything humanly possible for this. So where do you want to dive in on this movie?
Okay, so let's get started on the somewhat beginning of this thing. So it was the rights were purchased by Constantine Film. So this is an era, Paul knows this. This is an era of Marvel Comics, who's dealing with some financial woes, like a lot of people were, and a lot of the times back the day before these houses made their own studios like Marvel Studios and DC Films, is they sold the rights off to pay bills and let the other people make the movies and potentially make a profit on it, but they were guaranteed money by selling the rights off. So Constantine Films, as a low budget film company, bought for $250,000. So yes, in the early 90s, that seems like a lot of money, but think about the fact that if someone bought the Fantastic Four, Paul, like one of the most iconic teams in comic book history.
Like the first Marvel team, right? Like
$250,000, the rights to this movie.
It's insane.
Movies that in all likelihood, when this new Fantastic Four movie comes out on the MCU, is going to make $1 billion. Like you're thinking that you paid $250,000.
Can you imagine if they had managed to make this movie good back then? How much they would have profited off of it?
It's just insane. So the rights of the movie were supposed to lapse and return back to Marvel at the end of 1993.
Right.
And so they had to rush to go into production with a movie by the end of 93. And they actually started filming this movie December 28th, 1993, which a lot of the people who the actors who were on this documentary talked about it should have thrown up red flags because usually Hollywood shuts down for the month of December. Like Hollywood does not film anything. Spend time with their families, all that stuff. So going into production on the 28th of December should have been a red flag in the first place.
That should probably throw somebody off. It didn't seem like these actors were very well known though.
At the time, they weren't.
I read that to try to get like press out, a couple of them actually spent like $6,000 of their own money to get publicists to do this movie because they were excited about it.
Yes.
Like they thought that they had made like a big movie and this was going to get.
It was a springboard them to future roles, which is the truth.
Which is sad for these actors and actresses that had no idea what this was.
And a couple of them are like, whatever, but there's a couple of them who are like pretty upset, not like upset to the point where like, screw you, but upset to the fact that it's like, they don't know. Like thinking back, it could lead to a lifelong anxiety and depression of what could have been.
Right.
Even if it sucked, like it's still to the point where they would have been out. You can't tell. I can't tell you, Paul, that I sat here in this room and drew a comic book and wrote a comic book, and then it burned in a fire because I technically did do it, but I didn't because you haven't seen it and no one's seen it.
It never went anywhere.
So there's no point in the fact that I make it. So this movie they're talking about was that they still made a movie, but then they're like, well, where's the movie? Well, it doesn't exist.
Right.
It's like
you can't brag to fellow coworkers and other people that you know that you made this Fantastic Four movie because people are like, what? I've never heard of this. Like. Yeah.
And so there's that. But the Batgirl one is different. And my wife was trying to explain it. She was like, asking me questions when we were watching this. Like, well, why is the Batgirl one? And I said, well, what's the difference is this was made for a reason. There's the actors and actresses and everybody in this movie still don't understand why it was made to completion.
Right.
Why, if it was just had to go into
production, through all the trouble. I mean, there was the preview of it.
Yes.
Which, by the way, the preview alone and the trailer alone is terrible. Like it looks bad right off the bat.
Well, so here's the deal, and I want to preface this so everybody knows it looks terrible because it's what we're expecting in Marvel movies, even movies like Punisher, back in the day, and Blade, and all those movies from the early '90s. It's still a low budget version of a movie.
Because I
this is a $200 million movie. It looked like this. Yes, I'd say like a little different. They made the movie for $1 million. Like
they did.
Let's
so
give
to compare
at
time frame, I went and watched the pilot episode of Lois and Clark, which was released in 1993.
Yep.
And looks much, much better than this.
Yes. So there's a couple things that reason why in that.
So I wanted to go out and see like what else came out in this time because I'm like, this seems bad even for its era. Like I don't remember stuff being this bad. And like Speed came out
in
'94. Like there was, there was some, obviously high budget action movies and stuff, but they don't look this bad. I would explain this of looking very like Power Ranger-esque and not even good for Power Ranger rating, like standards of old original Power Ranger stuff.
Power Rangers towards the end of the original series run, where like you'd see like the ninjas that they're fighting like have stuffing falling out of their
the zipper up the back type style stuff.
So there's two things that go involved in that. One, obviously they made a movie for $1 million. That's crazy. The other thing would be is that the effects studio person they hired on a budget basically screwed them because they sold Constantine Films the idea that they did the special effects on what was it? Oh, Independence Day. They were the lead special effects person on Independence Day. The person probably didn't lie fully. They might have worked on the team that made the special effects.
This does not live up to the standards of Independence Day.
So they were going back and forth with the special effects guy. They definitely were saying this is not acceptable, but they had to finish. Like if the movie was re-released potentially, actually released, it's probably they'd go back and fix some of those special effects, but because they didn't have the budget or they get screwed by the person they hired. Yeah. So it came out. It was supposed to come out in 1994. It starred, I say starred, it's weird again because it didn't actually come out. Alex Hyde-White as Reed Richards and Mr. Fantastic, Rebecca Stabb as Susan Storm, Invisible Woman, Jay Underwood as Johnny Storm and Human Torch, Michael Bailey Smith as Ben Grimm, Joseph Culp as Victor Von Doom / Dr. Doom, Kat Green as Alicia Masters, which I want to get into, Mercedes McNabb as young Susan Storm, Philip Van Dyke as young Johnny Storm, and then a different person actually played the Thing, who was a stunt person named Carl Cafarlo or whatever. So two things really quickly I wanted to get off of is the movie visually, when you're watching the movie, is not good, right? No. Like, okay. It's a 1994 low budget movie that the reason they didn't make a lot of superhero movies back then is because it was hard to make a movie about crazy flying, stretching. The only thing that's easy potentially to do in one of those movies is Invisible People.
Well, you consider like the '89 Batman looks fantastic, but that was a Batman and a human, Joker human. You didn't have all these other elements of superpowers that you had to give stretching, invisibility, all of these things.
However, what I will say, Paul, is the storyline itself, the actual script, the writing, was not. I don't think it was the worst Fantastic Four script.
So I thought that both the writing and the acting were really bad. I thought both were bad. The writing side of it, there are plot holes that I do not get that didn't make any sense. Like what the guy was that was living in the sewer that they kept calling the jeweler.
He's the Weasel. He's Weasel.
Like why was he there?
Original script.
Why was he obsessed with Alicia? Like there was like a bunch of random plot holes that like didn't really make any sense. I have never, to be fair though, I have never watched the last Fantastic Four movie that came out that had Michael B. Jordan, and like I never watched that one.
That's one of the reasons why I say it's not the worst.
That's kind of what I assumed. That's kind of what I thought.
Because if you compare this to the original source material, which is a lot, like we didn't actually get a lot of variations. I thought about this last night when I was going to bed. Is we didn't get a lot of variations in changing the Marvel comic books, like big changes. And I thought to myself, I don't know for a fact, like someone's gonna have to correct me on this, but like Doctor Strange, when Tilda Swinton played what the hell's his name from Comertage, the head person, the main person.
Well, how we swapped
genders. We swapped genders. This sucks. The word comic book podcast, and I had it last night in my mind.
That's okay. Now I'm drawing a blank too.
So we swapped genders. Okay, that was a big change from the comic books.
The ancient one.
Thank you. But back then it's like they actually took a lot of the source material and actually brought it into the movie. The fact that they went to space, tried to go to space, and something went wrong, whether or not what actually happened in those things. They actually did those things originally when I saw it, and I saw them messing with it, and Victor Von Doom gets the electricity into him. I was like, oh my God, they don't actually even go to space in this, and that's how they actually get their powers.
I thought too.
But then I said, okay, I understand this. They used Dr. Doom. That's like still don't understand to this day why Dr. Doom wasn't a big part of the Fantastic Four original movies.
Right. I don't get and I hated the change in Dr. Doom in the original Fantastic Four movies where they gave him powers. And he was like looked like he was growing aluminum foil on himself. Like it was just bad. I will say for comic accuracy, not necessarily how great it looks on screen, comic accuracy, the Doctor Doom in this looked very good. Honestly acted a lot like Doom. There was a lot of obviously still weird, cheesy, hokey things going on, but the close-up mask scenes were good. Seeing his eyes and like his I don't know, the personality of Doom in this wasn't really bad.
No, as I said, like
I think Doom was probably, if you're gonna say what was the best part of this movie, I would say Doom was the best part of the movie.
And for 1994, low budget special effects, like the actual facial movements and stuff like that of the Thing, to me weren't horrible. Like he's too small.
He looks like a Ninja Turtle to me.
Yeah, well,
he looks exactly like the Ninja Turtles.
It's probably because they got it off of a used Ninja Turtle thing.
That probably the lips and stuff on it were very strange for the Thing to me, which I don't know. I guess it's hard to like picture how does the Thing move and talk, because I'm used to seeing, you know, the comics where you have.
He looks the closest to Kirby Thing than he did than what you haven't seen the newest ones. So it's hard to say. Like they went too modern. Like they did a modern twist on the original Kirby-esque. Same thing they try to do with the Doctor Doom. Here's the deal, Paul. I don't think we'll ever get a Doctor Doom that looks as good as this compared to Doctor Doom.
Probably not really,
because in the MCU we'll still get a Doctor Doom, but I don't think they'll use green cloak with a rope around his neck and a metal face.
The armor on this looked pretty good. The problem I think with some of the movements and stuff, it looked you could see that it was like foam and things like that. And the weird like it sounded like they did extra sound effects as supposed to sound like metal touching things. But no, visually the Doom costume looked right. It was probably the best part of the movie was the Doom costume and the portrayal of Doom in it. So honestly, much better than the other Fantastic Four movies that I've seen.
I was just thinking special effects on this, and I was thinking to myself, is the special effects in this that much better than the Spawn movie?
I'd have to watch the Spawn movie again. I would say I don't think the Violator looked bad in Spawn.
Oh, Violator's the best part. It's like they put all the budget in that.
Stuff. I don't know if they had any puppets for that.
No.
But
the flying Johnny Storm
was horrible. I showed that to Charlotte. I'm like, Charlotte, and I turned it, and like all I could think of was like Star Fox. Like this looks like the old Super Nintendo games that as a kid seemed amazing, but trying to watch this on the screen and to think 94, like these other movies that came out, watching Lois and Clark, I was like, that seems really bad even for that standard still.
Yeah.
Like, and so, really bad.
It's hard to do this podcast without letting people know that we actually got a pirated copy of this. Like it's like usually it's like you don't want to admit to that, but like you have to. So here's the deal, Paul. I also felt like I kind of short-handed you.
I would have bought. Let's go with this. I would have bought it for the sake of it if it was available to purchase.
Yes, and so like, I kind of gave you shortchanged you on the fact that I then took the file after I gave it to you, put it into my video editing software, and made it so it wasn't all stretched. Because it was definitely squeezed on your screen. I don't know if you noticed that. So I actually brought it into my video editing software. So the copy that I watched, actually I stretched out so it actually looked good.
It was blurry at times, and I just sort of went with it.
Like, 1994, whatever. It's from VHS tape to VHS tape to VHS tape. Someone eventually put it on digital. Like this is not what the original film looked like. So
I don't think it would have made that much of a difference, to be honest with you.
The other thing I loved a lot, okay, so there's a small things that are like trying to find the diamond in the rough here is the fact that they use Alicia Masters in this, like that to me, I liked that the relationship. The
character wasn't very well developed.
No, but like at least she was there.
She was in it. I do agree because she's such an important part of the Thing and the Thing's story and origins and stuff. But yeah, instantly falling in love with him after running into him for like 20 seconds or whatever, and he just ruined your sculpture. Your sculpture knocked you over. Yeah, and originally it was like, hey, watch where you go. Oh, I'm sorry. Like
and then he's like I think I'm in love
with him off of that. Like so that was weird.
Well, so there's a couple.
But it was cool. I mean, like you said, it was cool that she was a part of it when that's such a major part of the comics.
So the thing I said is like the plot itself I liked, like not the plot, but the actual overall arching story. The script was a little wonky.
Yeah,
there was plot holes for sure. The biggest one I thought that just like jumped out at me was when they're getting ready to leave to go to. First of all, Johnny Storm and Sue Storm have no need to be anywhere in space, and they're like, "Oh, we'll bring them because it's fun." And at the end of
what we have to bring. That's like if I go through NASA and become an astronaut, and I'm like, I gotta bring Dawn with me. Yeah, come on, Dawn, let's go, dude. What, we're taking off. Like what?
But as they're leaving
why
the
are
house,
these two here? They have nothing about any like abilities or science or background, nothing. They just all of a sudden pick them up from like this, I don't even know, this half house or whatever.
I don't know what the whole thing is, but But I love as they're leaving the house to go to space to go.
And they haven't seen them since they were children.
The Fantastic Four. Like, who the hell
God.
would say that?
I did the Peter Griffin. She said it.
like I understand, because sometimes you're like, well, how do they come up with these names? And they have to try to write it in how they came up with these names. But that was a little like they haven't seen each other in years, potentially. No. And they're just like, oh, there's 4 of you. And fantastic.
Look at you.
It's alliteration.
Fantastic
Four. And then that was pretty funny.
That was bad. The spacesuits. This was another one I didn't get.
Oh yeah.
The spacesuits.
Budget.
The 1960s G.I. Joe figure that my uncle gave me had the exact same spacesuit. This takes place in at least 94, if not the future, presuming from technology.
Well, technically it would be 2004 because if the movie happened in 1994.
93.
They went 10 years later.
This was also like, so
was that 83 and it was 10 years later it became 94.
I mean, they have technology there that doesn't exist, so in theory you're supposed to think it's even more futuristic probably. And the spacesuits look like something from the 60s. Like, I don't understand why they didn't at least have a better looking spacesuit that was modern at that time.
Well, they said that their budget on the cost of the budget was basically nothing. What was her name, Rebecca Stabb, who played Susan Storm, said that every time except for the spacesuit, the Fantastic Four suits, and the time they were in the like hazmat looking suits, the other outfits she wore on the movie were her own clothes.
Her own clothes. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me.
But that doesn't surprise me. By the way, you mentioned the Weasel, the whole thing underground. It was originally supposed to be Mole Man.
Well, that's kind of what I thought originally when I saw him.
It was the Weasel, but because of rights, just like you explained, the $250,000 basically getting the rights to the Fantastic Four, Doctor Doom, and auxiliary characters that aren't majorly connected to another Marvel property. So, for example, the Weasel potentially only is, whereas Mole Man has other interactions with the Avengers.
Right. I know Mole Man fights with people. I would still say if someone asked me who's the Mole Man's biggest villains, I would say the Fantastic Four.
Correct. But so they didn't have rights to the Fantastic Four, so they used.
That's what I assumed. I'm like, I guess he's the Mole Man, but they call him.
And I don't think they name him the Weasel the entire time. I think he's just in the credits as Weasel.
Okay. So,
funny thing is,
I know Doom refers to him as the Jeweler, I think, or I think it's where that comes from.
Yeah.
So why is he obsessed with her?
Don't know.
They never did anything about. He's like out there, like touching the window, and
he has to. Well, he's
looking in on her.
So they had to put a storyline in there that they steal the crystal thing, right? The gem,
right? The diamond.
Yes, because he put a fake one in there, and that's what happened. Diamond. Well, that's what happened to like cause the explosion, the whole thing that they all survived. I did like how like they landed on ground. And then slowly they actually started to figure out what their like Ben Grimm was just Ben
Grimm.
The
powers came out here or there by accident, or like Ben didn't show up until he slept, and then he woke up and
and the explanation on why there was basically their personalities that manifested into their powers, which was pretty cool.
Right, she's shy,
like that.
He's hot-headed. Yeah, and I think that came from the comics too, didn't it? That was
but that's why. Point is like,
and Ben Grimm in the comics was always sort of very standoffish, like football player, tough guy.
Yes. My point is that like Taylor doesn't read the comic books or doesn't know the original stories of the Fantastic Four. Watching this movie, she could get an idea without having to, and that's one of the things I think that the future ones kind of like took their own liberties on, was changing things, and it's like, okay, like, I don't know. This is such an iconic original story. It's like saying a Spider-Man, like with the Fantastic Four that came out in 2015, it was so bad, the fact that they changed enough that it's like if they changed Spider-Man from getting bitten by a radioactive spider from getting to shooting himself up with something like drugs that had something in it. Like it's changing things that aren't necessarily need to be changed. So that's why.
Right. So built into the origin of the character that to change it really messes with it. Yeah, I now actually do want to go back and watch the other Fantastic Four movies from watching this one. So, I mean, it did that for me. The suits were, the Fantastic Four suits looked like the Fantastic Four suits in the comics. They looked very good for that. It does not look good on screen. It's one of those things the MCU does better about changing them up a little. Because on screen they just don't look good.
The one thing I watched the documentary, one thing that she said that someone told her, so Rebecca Stabb is supposed to have made, Susan Storm was supposed to have made these suits. And so the one thing someone said, you could actually tell the clothing budget had no budget, like the wardrobe, and the fact that like you could see sewn on things, and if you looked up close. And they said one of the benefits of that is one of the downsides of like Spider-Man and the like
yes, the Tobey Maguire
ones, like, was so perfectly made. It's like
I always wondered that. And he made the first suit, which looks like crap when he goes into the wrestling thing, and then all of a sudden he's like, you know what? I'm going to make a splendid, amazing suit that looks like Like, there's no way I made this in my bedroom when my aunt was not watching. Like, there's
like
no way.
Matrix, where she's like, give me the power to, like, the ability to sew things, or like, I need to learn how to fly this helicopter, and he just tells, and they implement the information.
Yeah.
Well, she would make the costumes somewhat not so perfect, and I understand that, because that makes some sense, but that wasn't the original intent. That wasn't like what they were doing. Someone just made a crappy costume, and they just like, well, if you think about it that way, it's the way it would be. So yes, screen accurate, or comic book accurate looking costumes. I did like that. So there's some things that, like I said, there's small things that, like, we could see where they were going. They didn't have the budget. They didn't have the backing. Like, not just the financial backing.
Realistically, yes. I mean, it was rushed. The whole thing was a rush process. So yeah, I mean, absolutely, there was, different things there. They would have been much better. The sets were really, really not good.
No, they were reused from other Roger Corman projects, like Dino, whatever it was. There was another project that he used that they did some in the documentary. They show back and forth.
It makes sense, right? They had them
paint something,
so
and they go use them. Funny thing is Hyde-White, Alex Hyde-White, and Joseph Culp. So Alex Hyde-White played Reed Richards, and Joseph Culp played Victor Von Doom. Both of them have since appeared in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on ABC. So it's kind of funny that, like, years later that happened. Alex Hyde-White actually ended up appearing in Nope as well, the recent horror film, and was a doctor on the Dahmer series on Netflix.
I gotta watch that series.
Yeah. But the other people, like, actually went on to do some stuff, like they've been in stuff. But a funny thing is, for this movie, Alex Hyde-White's first comic book adaptation he was in was Captain America 2, the old made-for-TV movies.
I loved those when I was a kid, and I would love to watch those again.
Oh, me too.
Those I grew up renting when I was like probably 4 and thought they were awesome. Like I remember Captain America on the motorcycle, the shield on front of it, him coming out of the back of this like truck or whatever. Like, oh, it was so cool. Like, I'm sure it is just horrible.
All the praise I'm giving to the idea that this story, like the actual adaptation from the comic book, wasn't as bad. That's where it would fall off the cliff, because they made Captain America a lawyer in those movies. And it's just like, what the hell?
God, where did they even come up with that?
So finishing up on the actual original thing, then I want to just transition over to like, what's the bad, what has happened with the Fantastic Four? So it got a 3.8 on IMDb and a 27% and 31% critic and audience
Rotten
ratings,
Tomatoes.
Which I didn't look it up. I want to look this up now. Is it actually better than the one from 2015?
Oh, that's be good. So it was funny because I started looking up the actors. Like, I watched probably a half hour of it while I was on the treadmill, and then I like took a breather and I started looking at the actors. I'm like, who are these people? And then I found that the guy who played Johnny Storm played Bug on Uncle Buck.
Yep.
I absolutely love. And at one point he says a line, he like repeats it. Oh, I'm sorry. And that's where Bug was like in the trunk. He's like, oh, I'm sorry. And it sounded the exact same. Yes. And I was like, oh my God, there he is. I just want John Candy in the background now. Like,
so here's my actual hope in this, Paul. They did at the time to promote the movie, go to Comic-Cons.
Yeah, I saw that. They went to San Diego, right?
Yes. And they also went to small ones. Bangor, Comic, and Toy Con. How badass would it feel to get the original Fantastic Four to come up here, sign autographs, take photos?
That would be cool. Those would be some cool. The other thing is,
did they miss the boat?
Guests?
Did they miss the boat on using this?
Where is
in Multiverse of Madness?
More importantly, where's the Doom costume?
Yes.
Like, where is that thing? If you could find that, like, I'd love to get my picture taken with that. That thing's awesome. Like, so that's cool.
I also think they should have
taken with the Thing one, even though it looks like a Ninja Turtle.
So we say 3 point. So Rotten Tomatoes, 27%, 31%. Okay. 27 critic, 31 audience. Fantastic Four from 2015, 9% critic, 18% audience. So this actually got better.
It's got higher ratings. God, and then I have not watched this other
IMDb, 3.8 for the Fantastic Four unreleased film, 4.3. So it did get better, much, but that's not much for an independent film.
Not, for a $1 million budget movie, that is not a lot better. Like,
that's amazing. So it had to go to production.
Good on them for making this movie.
A bunch of the actors say that they thought that the actual film might have been seen by more now than they would have originally seen it.
Yeah,
which is great.
I could probably see that. I mean, as a kid, like, I was at the movies. I remember these summers, and I was at the movies once a week. My uncle and I would go. So chances are, if this had come out back then, I would have seen it. I would have been in the theater. I would have been all excited to see another comic book adaptation, and I would have been in the theater to watch it.
Let's do some speculation here in a second, but on why that I have a little paragraph to read about why this didn't actually end up being made or released. But you auditioned for Doctor Doom?
No, who?
Mark Ruffalo.
Really?
Pre-Mark Ruffalo, like before.
Yeah.
That's
before
funny.
He was a known like actor.
Titus Welliver, who was in a bunch of stuff too recently, as of late. And for Ben Grimm was Patrick Warburton, who was on Seinfeld, and he's been the voice of the Tick, and which is kind of funny.
Can you imagine if Mark Ruffalo's first Marvel was this, and then he went on to do the Hulk? Like,
that would have been amazing. But so future Marvel Studios founder, so the founder of Marvel Studios, not Marvel Comics, Marvel Studios, Avi Arad.
Yes,
at that point, in 1993, was a Marvel executive. He says, this is quotations, "Listen, I think what you have done was great. It shows your enthusiasm for the movie and the property, and I understand that you've invested so much time and effort into this. And Roger has invested so much time. Let's do a deal." Meaning, because he really wanted the idea of the movie being a major motion picture with major names like Christopher Columbus attached to it and things like that, he says he didn't want the idea of a small movie coming out that could potentially ruin the franchise for future. So he says he wants to give them back the money that was put into the movie, plus a little more, to not release the movie. So basically, and then in the new Constantine, the rights thing, there was a whole option that they paid for something, they did something, they can get the rights back. And, and they got the rights
that
back.
Was the big point, I guess, of doing it, was that they could try to keep the rights to do another one.
What year did the Fantastic Four come out? The original one?
Ooh. Must have been
I was trying to
2005?
Yeah, 2005. I was trying to think of how long it took them. It went from 10 or 11 years later they actually made the actual movie
to get there. I had read too that I thought it was the same person that found copies of this outside of the US and bought all of them up and had them destroyed to make sure they didn't get released anywhere.
Well, he
wanted to make sure that it didn't like put a bad name on what the MCU properties were going to become.
So here's the documentary. At the end of the documentary, they talked about Avi Arad said that he had bumped into someone in the Bermudas who said, "Oh, I know, so on and so forth." And he supposedly bought the film, the actual raw film, and burned it. Is what his quote was in an interview. And a lot of the theories of people that are around that actually are film people says if he was a true film person, it's in a vault somewhere at Marvel and Disney.
Right.
Because you don't let it go out, but you don't destroy it either.
You don't destroy it.
And so that's the theory is. And the other theory is that any company, Marvel Comics, Marvel Studios, Disney, all these are businesses, right?
Right.
So if they have the ability to profit off of this movie,
Why wouldn't they? Yeah.
And so whether or not it coincides is, my theory is we're going into the multiverse saga right now, right? That's the theory. So,
oh my God, a quick pop into this universe.
They said, why not put it at the end of the Fantastic Four movie when it comes out on the special features in the DVD? Yeah. Why not make it its own thing? Like expand the universe and see this unreleased movie, and then maybe do some editing to it, like add the special effects. If they can profit off the movie,
the fire stuff, and Johnny Storm taking off, and
it's free money. Yeah. They just have to make it into it. You guarantee you right now, I don't collect DVDs that much anymore. I have most of mine digital. Right. But back here on this shelf right here would be a copy of this movie if I could buy it from Best Buy.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
I would have bought it for the sake of it. I'd show it in the store periodically to like my buddies. Like, hey guys, you got to see this. Like, check this thing out.
It's part of Marvel movie lore. It's part of Marvel movie lore history.
Yeah, absolutely. It's neat. It's a cool thing. Like,
and to me, it sucks that it wasn't released because of the fact that I don't think it's that much worse than the early '90s Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie. Like, you know what I mean? Like the Captain America movies. Like, is it really that much? Is honestly the special effects really that much work? I mean, I'm not gonna say to put them in the same category as the Incredible Hulk, what's his name, TV show. But my point is the special effects and the actual things that go on in this movie any much worse than those in the Marvel lore? So
probably not. Like I said, realistically, they were about the effects of like the early Power Ranger stuff that wasn't like super high quality, and that like if this movie came out and was rated, let's say PG. This could have been a kid's movie or a, something like that. Cause it's not like, there's a bunch of shooting in it, but you don't see blood. Nobody's
Well, that's because they probably didn't have the money.
Yeah, the Thing's punches are all sort of ridiculous. Like,
yes. Well,
like
they didn't show a fight.
And then a guy flying across the room later. Like,
yeah. Do you remember like when they were in that room waiting and they were breaking out?
Yeah.
And they're like, Thing, do your thing. And he goes, and they just spins the screen around a bunch of times.
Yeah.
And then it's just him sitting there like this and they're all knocked out. It's like they didn't want to shoot the film scene, fight scene.
Yeah. They probably didn't want to try to figure out an action.
What's his name?
Or maybe the suit didn't move well either.
The Yu-Gi-Oh fan, you're what's his name? In your shop? Aaron would have been pissed at that.
Yeah, he's like, I want to see these guys
fight.
It's clobbering time. Let's see it. Yeah, and instead it's just the spinning screen, which was odd. They did it a couple times in the movie.
Yeah,
that was weird.
But like I said, in all sense of the thing, it's like the funny part to me is so I do think the best acting out of all of them was Mr. Fantastic. I think he had that vibe.
Really, I disagree. I would have gone with Doom.
Okay, well, Doom was great too. So I would say 1A, 1B on that, in my opinion. But like I do think that. And it might have been because also those two characters I think are probably were the most established at the time, and so there was that.
I found Mr. Fantastic's timing to be weird a lot.
Okay, and well, he's an awkward person
and dry, a lot of like weird dry.
But is that I would think that's who he is,
I suppose.
though.
Yeah, Reed Richards is a weird guy. Like,
yeah,
he's probably not very socially. I don't know, but with it.
So this movie supposedly was purchased by Marvel Studios back to say we don't want to ruin the rest of the franchise.
Yeah, we're not.
Was that the worst quote Avi Arad has ever said in the history of working at Marvel Studios? Because where did their franchise really go from there? Like, let's be honest. 10 years later, we got another movie that had star actors and actresses in it. You're talking like the epitome at the time of like teeny bopper, like people were obsessed. Like,
Jessica Alba.
Storm. Oh my God. That's the reason I watched that movie in 2005. You know what I mean? Like, and then they did Rise of the Silver Surfer. Okay, you got Silver Surfer now finally, and they're one of the greatest comic book characters of all time.
Love
and
the Surfer.
You miffed it. And then let's reboot it. Let's try it again in 2015. And they get it. They did it worse. Like, how the hell did you go backwards?
Yeah, how did it get worse? It's funny to think that Marvel had such financial problems back then. If you think of like, that was the era of X-Men 94 coming out. That was like, I think the comics were probably not very well managed at that time because they were just overprinting everything.
Yep.
But that was also the era when you went to a toy store and there was an entire like aisle of Marvel superhero figures and stuff that I was a kid. I was gobbling them up. Like, it's weird to think they had financial issues at that time. It would seem like they should have been a strong company at that era. Why are the Fantastic Four so poorly done now?
I don't understand it. The story is amazing. Like, you think about the actual people, the idea that they're a team, that they're a quote-unquote quasi-family because of the connection with brother and sister.
You should have this like good relationship amongst them all.
And there's this whole
Ben
battling
being his best friend,
and then getting to look like a monster. Like, there's just all these story and plot lines, and there's deep stories that you could use. And there's space involved. There's powers. They live in New York City. Like that. There's that aspect of. There's just so much involved in it that they have
a very large villain core that's mostly their own. And Dr. Doom is certainly one of my favorite Marvel villains.
I mean, he's top 5 villains of all time.
Doom is an incredible villain.
I do hope. Paul, speaking of Dr. Doom, I hope they go the route in Marvel Cinematic Universe of not the extremely hideous, ugly Doom, but the variation of Doom that has like the one scar on his face, and he's so vain that he wears the mask, and that's like making him super ugly. I think that is a better interpretation of it than that, because obviously if you look like shit, you're gonna wear a mask. But if you think that if I have a pimple on my face,
you're so obsessed.
If I have a pimple on my face, I'm gonna wear a mask into the store like we have been for the pandemic, so people don't see the pimple, even though it's just a freaking pimple. To have a small scar on your face and be like, that's the reason why. I have to wear this mask would be awesome.
I love the idea too. Like I don't understand when the Fantastic Four movie came out. I never understood this, that Doom ran and hid behind the shield and left them all out there in the spaceship. And that would have been the point, and you would have had a perfect setup that they got powers. He didn't. Yeah. He became obsessed with that fact of getting powers. And then he gets into either the dark magics or builds a costume so that he has this suit. So he's Iron Man-esque, so that he has powers through the suit because he's a genius and can do it. And that's why he does it, because he is so obsessed with power and so angry that these guys all got it and he didn't. I don't know why the hell they gave him powers. Why did he then run behind the screen and supposedly protect himself? And he starts getting the weird, like, shooting electricity out of his fingers, and like I said, growing aluminum foil all over himself. Like, looked terrible. I don't get why the hell they even went that way with the story. I don't want to see Doom with powers. I want to see the obsessed, insane person who's so intelligent but also so out of it that he builds his suit.
Yeah.
And, you know, do the dark magic stuff with him if you want. You already have magic in the MCU. It's really easy to tap into.
Well, now I feel like with the history of the 30 so on films in the MCU, by the time we get to the Fantastic Four, we have a basis of like, oh, this is what you can do, this is what you can't do. And so like moving forward, what they did back then, I feel like what the stupid thing that happened was too many people were attached to these movies that were trying to make a name for themselves on like, how can I make this the most creative thing that I have writing a script that based off of an adaptation from someone's book or previous iteration of something is you like, well, you know, like someone Stephen King, something like doing an adaptation of a Stephen King, you got to make your own twist on it because Stephen King's such a well-known name. People aren't going to remember my name. I just posted something on the site last night that said the Stephen King's The Boogeyman trailer just dropped. And I was like, Stephen King's The Boogeyman. Stephen King has nothing to do with it. It's someone else. But the reason that Stephen King's name is attached to it, he's the selling point. I'm never going to remember who even directed the film because Stephen King was.
You just know Stephen King's name on it.
So when you have the Fantastic Four in the early 2000s, it's like, did the people attached to the movie want to make it their own and twist some things on their own? So like, oh, look how cool it is. All I did was alienate and piss off the people who we changed things to a great story that was already created. Like you didn't need to do that. And now I feel like there's been history of we make great superhero movies that you don't have to do that now. You can change some things. Like I'm all for.
Well, I think it's important. Some things like we discussed that the suits in this movie didn't look right on screen because they were so comic accurate that you put them on the screen, they just don't look right. Like I think a lot of DC property, I think, has an issue with that, where they stick so close to the comics, and I enjoy that fact. But the non-comic readers are alienated by it because it just doesn't look right when you see it. Like it goes up and you go, what the hell am I looking at right now? Like this doesn't make any sense to me. When if you read the comics, you get that vibe. So I can see changing some things up, right? But things like Doom, you could so easily do and have it come out looking good. Like, and they just never did it. Like so far.
Have you heard the theory, the fan theory out there that Carlos Esposito is going to be cast to play Dr. Doom?
Yes.
Here's the deal. I obviously in my mind, am I picturing the Victor Von Doom looking like the way it did in this 1994 unreleased film? Yeah, I'm picturing that because that's what he was in the comic books. But like, would I be 100% okay with Carlos Esposito playing that role? He plays a freaking badass villain,
right?
And so what if he's black? Like whatever, and like that to me is not the part that makes the story. Whether
I mean, Kane the Conqueror is not black in the comic series, and the actor they have playing him in the MCU is fantastic in his role,
Jonathan Majors. But so the other thing is like you can't do that. Is you couldn't. I personally don't think you could have made Tony Stark a woman because he's a womanizer, and so the idea
it wouldn't fit the plot right.
No, like a woman being someone who's obsessed with men is not as much of a thing as it is a man who's obsessed with women. So like there's certain things you can't change, but changing someone's race when they wear a freaking mask the entire time doesn't bother me. But there's small things like their origins, like some of the origin story stuff. Like why would you screw with that? It was a great idea. They went up there, cosmic rays, like you mentioned, maybe he didn't get powers and he's jealous, or what they did in this movie where they made him
all this. And he's so egotistical that he won't listen to Reed. When Reed tells him that the math is wrong, you need to change something. And that's why he ends up the way he does.
Yes. Yeah. I personally don't think they'll do Carlos Esposito because I do think this is one thing I will say is I feel like they're going to go younger for everything. Because of the fact
it makes sense because you want to have a long projection role of these characters. We had Chris Evans go through as Cap, and we had Robert Downey Jr. go through as Iron Man. So it would make sense now that we're trying to move into Phase 5 that we want to have actors that we're going to have a long term with. So that does make sense. This could
be the team.
And and Doom's a character you want. Yeah, Doom can be the Thanos that goes movie after movie after movie villain. Because
they need. Doom. I'll tell you right now, Kang is going to be humongous for the phase because they need that story that intertwined. Something that Phase 4 missed was there was no big bad that continued.
Yeah, Phase 4 in every movie didn't really have any other connection to any other movie per se. Like, yes, there were some characters and crossovers and stuff, but overall, It didn't. None of it particularly mattered. Like
you
the
mentioned
stuff that
Phase
goes on in
4,
Shang-Chi has no effect on Eternals, and
I want to ask you a serious question here, Paul.
Okay.
Is the unreleased 1994 Fantastic Four movie better than Love and Thunder?
Whoo. Okay. I can say this, and I'm sure like at some point Garrett might listen to this. I did not get inebriated to get through the Fantastic Four 94 movie, unlike Love and Thunder that I had to because I could not tolerate it.
Part of the Fantastic Four thing is we're almost 30 years.
It was forgiven. Fantastic Four was forgiven. It was $1 million budget movie from 1994. 93.
It's also 30 years old, Paul, right?
Yeah.
Next 2024 will be 30 years.
Love and Thunder, these people should know better. Like,
well, also, I think at this point you can watch it. I watched it on a idea that it was a campy film, like a film that was like not supposed to be taken seriously. Like I'm watching this film
with the Batman and Robin movie because as a kid I grew up with '89 Batman, which I loved, and Batman Returns. Batman Forever was getting a little on the weird side. Batman and Robin I despised. And I was talking to a guy in here who's, maybe 10 years older than me. And he said he loved Batman and Robin and went to it a bunch because it was so campy. And it was like reminiscent on the 66 Batman style stuff where like the villains are sort of goofy and, Bam Pow and all this sort of stuff. And it sort of fit that. So I could see this with the 94 Fantastic Four movie versus like the progression in the Marvel MCU stuff of Thor in his original movie and in Avengers, and he's a badass, and then eventually you get to stuff where there's a like an emoji thing, and there's like it's just the stupid goats. Ugh. Yeah, no,
so I would
watch Fantastic Four 94 again over watching Thor: Love and Thunder again. Let's go with that.
I think the people who made this film, not the upper people like who Roger Corman's and the people from New Constantine, and the people over at Marvel who bought it off of them and so on and so forth. I think the people, lower level people, the director, I said the directors are lower level people in this one. Director and everybody below the director truly wanted to make a good movie. And they tried,
and they really believed that they had made like the actors and stuff. Like we said, they believed they made a good movie. They were excited for its release. They wanted to see this out there. And I think realistically, like I said, looking at it, if this was geared towards children, which at the time I was a kid, I probably would have liked it. My uncle probably would have looked at me while we were in the theater like, are you serious right now? And I'd be like rocking out my Dr. Noob shirt and thought this was cool. Like, yeah, I can see it. Like we're looking at this now as adults.
Yes.
I'm 40 and have been reading comics since I was like 6, 7. Mm-hmm. So, it's hard to go back and look at that. But if I look at it through the eyes of, little Paul going to the movie theater every week, I probably would have liked this movie.
We also have seen where progressions of CGI and special effects have gone, whereas 30 years ago, obviously it wasn't still up to par, but it might have been the difference between like a A-list movie and a B-list movie.
Well, there's so many parts of this movie too that just didn't make any sense. Like the sewers there, and then every guy that gets killed in the sewer falls into some giant pit that apparently just goes on forever. Like, where the hell did this come from in New York? Like, well, there's just so many weird parts of this thing. Yeah. But, I went to see Mortal Kombat as a kid, and I thought it was super cool. And, like, I probably don't want to sit through Mortal Kombat now. I'm 40.
Classic. I do like, so the positives, again, one more positive about the film is the fact that they did the wedding at the end, too, which was cool.
Yeah.
Like,
the wedding, and she was in her, I love she was in her dress, and then the rest of them were in their Fantastic Four suits. And
that's iconic.
Yeah, it was so famous. Like the hand coming out the top and waving was.
Well, that was ridiculous, but yes.
I thought it was sort of funny. I enjoyed it.
Like, look at it. I'm like, oh my god, that's definitely someone with a stick and an arm going like this. It's
it was like a wacky inflatable tube man. They stuck the arm up. But like, I like that they added that. Like,
so I'll tell you right now, I do think, like I said, I'm glad we watched it. I'm glad, but it still baffles me, and I still don't think we even answered our question on why the hell they can't make a good one. We'll have to wait and see. I guess we'll have to revisit this, Paul, when we get to the MCU's version.
We get to the new MCU release.
Is why they can't do this. I mean, it's such a great stories. It's great. Huge.
Is it like you said, too many hands in the pot trying to make themselves a name, make something
instead of the actual characters in the movie itself?
Yeah, so caring about the way it's done.
Well, I mean, think about. I did not know. What's his name? Now I'm gonna forget his name. Coogler, Ryan Coogler. I had no idea who he was until he made the Black Panther movie.
Right.
But he nailed the Black Panther movie, in my opinion.
And it was so great to read about stuff where Chadwick Boseman wanted to make sure that things stayed authentic to the character, to the Black Panther, to the African culture, so that everything in it had the right flow.
Yeah.
So it's great to see that, you know, an actor stepped up and said, wait, no, I want to make sure that this stays true to the property.
And then people will respect that now. And I think it's different. Like
Yeah.
I said, we're 30 years after this movie came out. So
everything's different. And we're all, you know.
Yeah, I know. But as we get finishing this up, is one of the questions I have to you is if this wasn't the Fantastic Four, if this was a movie based on, I hate to say it because of the Punisher, because they didn't make a Punisher movie, but if it was based on Iron Man, for example, because he wasn't as popular back then, do you think it would have been released?
Probably not. Still,
I think it would have, because the fact that they were trying to protect what they thought was one of the big 5 movie franchises. You have your X-Men,
X-Men,
Spider-Man, Captain America, Hulk. I mean, they had
back then Iron Man wasn't nearly as popular. Like,
so if this is an Iron Man film, I honestly think it would have they would have let it been made. It would have gone into the lore of the old Nick Fury Agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. movie that came out with David Hasselhoff and like that movie was made. That movie was horrid. And that was allowed to be made. Like, that's crazy. And that's the thing. And that's confusing to a lot of current comic book readers, because they don't realize that Sam Jackson's agent Nick Fury is the ultimate Nick Fury, because the original Nick Fury was white and old. So but
I hate to say this, but David Hasselhoff isn't the worst casting for the Nick Fury of that era, really.
Like, you have this Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. movie, the Captain America movie, you have the Dolph Lundgren Punisher movie. These movies all came out, and I guess at that time, I think they were such lower characters in the sense that they were like, okay, well, it's not going to ruin the future of this franchise.
Right.
The Fantastic
honestly,
Four,
the
they thought,
movie could have just been another action movie of its time. You didn't even know that it actually had a connection to Marvel. There wasn't like, you didn't see Captain America go by or Spider-Man, or it had nothing to do with anything else besides the Punisher.
Yeah.
And him just killing a bunch of criminals. Like,
it was bad.
Dolph Lundgren just going through people, mowing them down.
Is that the next one? Is that the next movie we do on this thing?
I'd watch that movie again. I'll tell you what, Dawn still likes the original one more than the Thomas Jane one.
Oh, really?
To him, the Punisher is Dolph Lundgren, which, I mean, I personally enjoy the Thomas Jane Punisher the most.
Do you know there's a small, like a short film they made with Thomas Jane one too?
He made it himself,
Dirty
right?
Laundry,
he paid for the whole thing. Yeah, and I mean, it's not, the special effects in it are a little on the off side, but it was I like the clip. Yeah, the little mini movie he did, I like.
The special effects thing is funny because I watched this movie as we close up this podcast. I've watched this movie called The Velocipaster. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a priest who gets ripped, like an ancient velociraptor claw cuts him, and he gets the ability that when he gets upset, he turns into a velociraptor. And the reason I even watched this is it got this cult following on the internet. Like, it was a really badly made movie, but they were like, people like, it's got like 40% on Rotten Tomatoes, which is like incredible for that kind of movie.
You enjoy watching it.
First 3 minutes of the movie is explaining why this guy's going through this grief, and he goes on this trip to China and stumbles upon the thing is he sees his parents' car get blown up outside the church. He leaves the church, he walks down the steps, he says, "Hi, Mom," and he waves to the mom, and he sees his mom and dad, and the car blows up. But they don't actually show the car blowing up, Paul. You don't hear the explanation or this explosion, and they show nothing. They show the spot where the car was, and on the screen writes VFX car blowing up. Which to me was almost better than shitty graphics and special effects. Because I'm like, okay, fine. We know what this movie is.
Could you show the kid waving to them and then just the kid falling back on the stairs?
But they owned it. They're like, we don't have the budget.
Like,
they also used the Velociraptor. Like, the cover of the movie looks dope. They're like, oh my gosh, this looks amazing. The Velociraptor is paper mache.
Oh my god!
And it looks like a T-Rex, more of a but my point is those
old crappy
made it campy.
Horror style movies are great for this stuff though. Like,
well, they made it campy. They did it on purpose. They did this for that reason. Whereas this movie, they thought this was going to be
taking
good.
itself seriously and thought they were really.
And again,
which is
it
hard.
is not the worst movie I've ever seen by far. There's so many more movies that I've seen that are worse than this. Yeah. I do think that the overall arching story of what they were trying to accomplish from beginning to ending was better than some other things.
I think the Doom and Fantastic Four parts of it were good. I felt
the Weasel thing was weird, but the
Weasel guy was just weird. We could have just left him out of this whole thing, and that honestly would have improved the movie quite a bit, I think.
I liked Alex Hyde-White's acting. I liked Dr. Doom's acting. Some of the other ones were kind of like, eh. But like, I don't know, for what it was, for the $1 million budget, you know, low budget.
If we had $1 million, could we make a better Fantastic Four movie than this? I don't know that we could, really.
We should have gotten Shane Grant on this one to tell us that, because he's making movies for like $30,000. So that would be fun to see what he can do. And just do a fan film of the Fantastic Four, call it the Fantastic Three, and just do the amazing Three, and just do a rip off on the Fantastic Four.
So I'm assuming if I'm in this based on my size, I'm the Thing.
No, we should not. You should make you Susan Storm.
Oh, I'm Susan.
This is a parody of it.
Yeah, yeah.
I bet Shane could make a parody.
My dreamy eyes staring at Reed Richards all the time.
So you could Google this and try to find your own copy. I don't know if they allow people to sell them at Comic Cons anymore. Like the comic conventions might say you're not allowed to do that. I don't know. I don't know how all that works. You can find it on the internet. The funny thing about this is that I don't know if you'd get in trouble for finding it or whatever. I don't know. I'm not giving you legal advice on whether or not
I don't know what the rights are in this movie.
But if you find the chance and find the opportunity to watch this, I think it's worth it, just because it's a part of Marvel history and movies, and it shows the progression of how amazing the MCU has become from the days. And again, I personally will say it right now, hand to God, is that I don't think it's the worst Fantastic Four movie, because I do think that the 2015 Fantastic Four movie is the worst.
I have to go watch the 2015 one now.
So that's being
I've
said,
never watched it.
But can we be in agreement that you haven't even seen the movie yet, Paul? But can we be in agreement you haven't even seen the 2015 one yet, to say there isn't a good Fantastic Four movie?
Yes. Without even seeing that one, I would go, because I could tell you, going off of the previews of the 2015 one, I said there's no way I'm watching that. The other ones are better than that, just off of the previews of the 2015 movie. So
it's worth it. Again, it's history. It's one of those things that's just like, I don't know. It's like seeing the Star Wars special. I guess it did show in the 70s. They did show that on TV, but you cannot buy it now. Whereas this is the same thing. This never showed, but you still obviously can't buy it because unreleased. It's worth it. And I'll tell you right now, if you can go back and watch any of them again, this is one. At least watch this one. Don't bother yourself with the other ones. If you haven't seen this one, at least watch this one, because it's something new.
It was fun.
And for Dr. Doom's costume and alone, it's worth it.
The Doom costume was great. And you know what's funny? The Doom, when they showed parts of the Doom costume, I was impressed with like some of the articulation at the shoulder. Yeah. And you could see like it looked like there was like, I don't know, like was a made metal suit. Like it looked like, and the mask was great. Like the mask was very
well. They said also they vacuum formed that, and then they put the rivets to connect the forms together, and they didn't have to hide them. Usually they like sand them off because
right. It's supposed to look like that. Yeah. So it was like that part of it was great. Like
so that's just crazy. So again, it's funny, and I don't know. Well, maybe we'll get. Here's the thing: the bar can't be that high for the MCU Fantastic Four movie.
No.
Like you have to break like 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
I feel bad because I am not the biggest Fantastic Four fan either. Yeah. Like I don't have a giant collection of FF books in my PC or anything. I feel bad for big Fantastic Four fans out there for what has been done of them.
Well, the cartoon was good. So there you go.
Oh yeah, I enjoyed the cartoon as a kid. Like I would watch that again. Like I haven't watched that.
So if you stick with the cartoon if you're a big fan and want to watch it. If you're a Fantastic Four fan and haven't seen this movie, that's actually saying something, because if it was me and I'm a huge Fantastic Four when I'm seeking this out, like I had this copy for a long time, and I just first watched it. It almost was like what we were doing for book club, reading a specific book to make it so we read it. This was like, okay, we got to schedule a podcast with Paul, so it makes me watch this movie, and get through it. So it was only an hour and a half too. If it was a 3-hour movie, it
we went by pretty quickly.
And in the future, one of these ones, maybe the Thomas or the Dolph Lundgren Punisher one, is we do it. I've always wanted, because you can watch that one, you can buy that one and get that one. Yeah. I've always wanted to do it where you throw it up on your screen, I throw it up on my screen, we press play, and we talk about the movie as the movie's playing. But muted, so obviously you don't copyright or anything like that. But it'd be kind of like a Mystery Science 3000 kind of like thing. And we can actually do it in person too if we wanted to like sit down and do that. It'd be kind of cool. Yeah. Do these like cheesy old movies.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Let's do it for the 2015 Fantastic Four.
Oh God. We're gonna need beer for that. We can't.
Obviously, that episode's sponsored by Orno Brewing Company for sure. But yeah, it's fun. I am excited for it. So excited for people to see it, because again, it's like I said, it's the lore, and I cannot wait to see what they do with the Fantastic Four. Casting should come up soon. We should be able to see this and all that stuff.
Start seeing how this new one's gonna roll out.
It's exciting. So there might be another episode coming up soon connected to this episode that I can't say anything about yet on this episode.
Ooh, intriguing.
Yes. So it should be fun in the future. We've got a lot of good things coming up here. Free comic book days coming up at Galactic Comic at your local comic book shop. But if you're in the Bangor area,
hit your LCS.
LCS local comic shop at Galactic Comics and Collectibles. GalacticComicsandCollectibles.com.
GalacticComicsCollectibles.com.
By this month or January, we're recording this in January, so it'll actually come out in February. But January was Something's Killing the Children book club book. And then if you have the ability and want to follow along, Superman Son of Krypton is February's book. So check that out.
I let one of our book club members pick it, and we're reading Superman, and everyone knows how much I love Superman.
Well, say Paul and I, this is again
right up there with Star Wars.
Book club is making us read Superman. So there you go. See, that's the thing. Sometimes you have to schedule something to make you read something. I'm not going to call out right now on the podcast the other one that's going to make us read, because I do like the author, and I don't want to. I'm hoping one day the author.
I love the author. I have a hard time with the art of the other one, and I'll be excited to read it. So I am forced to sit down and read the entire thing, as I'm going to be forced to read Superman. And who knows, maybe I'll enjoy it.
The hope is that this author at some point comes on the podcast, so I don't want to shit on it. So
that'd be amazing. That'd be amazing.
So Galactic Comics is available on Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff. GalacticComics.com. Free Comic Book Day coming up May 6th. That's a ways away, but up until then, if you're in the area, Bangor, Maine, check out Hammond Street in Bangor for Galactic Comics and Collectibles. Also the website, and I don't think there's anything else we need to talk about. Right?
We covered it all.
Paul will be on before the Free Comic Book Day to go over some of the selections that are available both at his shop and maybe some of the ones that were available that you didn't get but are available to check out your LCS.
There are a lot. There are always a lot, and I have a hard time picking and choosing what we select, because there is so many to go through.
Yes. So let me just check my schedule here so that I can actually, because this is coming out in a couple of weeks, so I want to make sure that Paul Eaton. So next episode after this one is Mark London from Mad Cave Studios, talking his book as well as other stuff on that. And then there's 2 episodes that are in limbo right now, but we've got some letterers, some artists, some creators, some movie people, some authors. I'm working hard, Paul, to get a specific someone to come on for episode 100 in April. I am putting a lot of eggs in this basket. It might end up being Paul Eaton on the episode of 100 if I can't, but that's not a bad thing.
I've been in the top 10 for all time, like for the year of books or whatever I was on.
Jonathan Hedrick has made it in the top 10 twice, so
that's true. I got to try to get up there now. Nobody wants to listen to me.
No, I think this is fun. So I think we should do more episodes like this, which is like just random things. It also could be with reading books that are really bad books, or like whatever it may be. But I think that watching movies or watching TV show is fun. Stuff that no one wants to watch. So maybe you just listen to our podcast instead of having to watch it.
You don't have to watch it then. Yeah.
But hopefully, to the gods of comic books and creators of movies and stuff like that, we get a good Fantastic Four movie at some point. Again, the bar is not very high for the MCU.
No, it's really not. I'd say the highest Fantastic Four we've had so far was in Doctor Strange.
Yes.
The Multiverse of Madness. That's our top. That's our tier right now. That's where we're
funny
at.
Thing is, I was going to say it started really high with the Fantastic Four movie in 2005 because it was something, and then it went down from there. But this came out. It was supposed to come out in 94, so it would have started down and come up. But it is what it is. So there are actually 4 movies, not 3, because of this one that is unreleased. But check it out, and maybe we'll get them to come up for the Bangor Comic and Toy Con.
That'd be cool.
It'd be fun. But
find that Dr. Doom costume.
Now I feel like I want to get something from this movie tattooed on me. I just set an appointment. May 18th. I set an appointment, so we'll see what I want to get then.
February 28th. I got my next one. Surfer.
Maybe I'll get a Ben Grimm or the Thing from this movie.
The Ninja Turtle looking thing.
The Thing with the Ninja Turtle mask on.
Oh, that'd be dope, actually.
And a sigh.
Do the crossover.
But, cool. As always, and I'm changing the exit of this podcast. Independent comic books are better than all the major publishers. So
I'll take it.